Today's study is going to involve 2 Samuel chapter 6 and more about how our bodies are the temple of God and how important that is and how many of us do not take that seriously enough. I happen to find this article which conveys exactly what I've been trying to say about David, Uzzah, and the Ark of the Covenant. The ark means a box or chest. The pattern of the ark was revealed to Moses in Exodus 25. It was to be made of wood, rectangular in shape, gold-plated inside and out. It had a decorative gold border around it, forming a rim on the top of the ark. It had a cover made of gold, called the mercy seat, and matched the dimensions of the ark. At either end of the cover was a hammered gold cherub, or an angel, with wings outstretched over the plate. You see the creatures as they pull their wings in front of their faces and look down upon the ark. They apparently were small because a solid gold piece would be extremely heavy if it were very large, and the ark would be top-heavy and awkward to carry. And the ark was mobile. Beneath the plate within the container were three objects: a golden jar that held the manna, Aaron's rod, and the tables of the covenant. God promised he would meet with the people of the mercy seat. The very glory of God was shown on this mercy seat. So to put it bluntly, the ark was holy. It was set apart to God. So careful with God that in the details of the drawing that he wrote in Exodus 25, he gave the dimensions. He said how it was to be covered. He even talked about how it was to be carried. At the base of each of the four corners was a fixed ring of gold. Through these rings were slipped gold-plated poles by which the entire chest was to be carried. Numbers 3, 4, and 7 clearly state that handling the tabernacle was to be done by Levites and it was to be done on their shoulders. Now please note each one of these things were important to God, even how the ark was transported from one place to another, because that's where David got into trouble. David thought the best way to move the ark was on a cart, 2 Samuel 6:3. So they got a new cart and set the ark on the cart and started to transport it, but something happened. Suddenly there's a death, 2 Samuel 6:7. What did Uzzah do to deserve death? Now we can see it reads here in 2 Samuel 6:6. And when they came to Nachon's threshing floor, or Nachon's or Nachon, I am not sure how to pronounce that, but when they came to his threshing floor, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of God and took hold of it, for the oxen shook it. And it seems like a pretty natural thing to do. Something's getting ready to fall automatically. Without thought, you reach over to try to stop it from falling. And that's what Uzzah did. He tried to grab it. But the fact that we have to remember is that if they would have been doing it right to begin with, it would not have dropped off. Okay, so what is the right way? The Levites were the ones who were supposed to carry the ark. The poles were to be put through the little ringlets at the bottom of the ark. The poles were to be placed on the shoulders of these specially chosen men, and they were to balance it as if they carried it from one place to another. And David didn't do that. He took a convenient route and changed the details to fit the expediency of the hour. Now you have to figure it had been many, many, many years since God gave the instructions of how to do this thing. So David could have said to himself, oh, that was a long time ago that God gave those instructions, so this is many years later, so this is the easiest way to do it, so this is how I'm going to do it. Now, David did it all wrong. All right, so David was accountable for Uzzah dying, if you think about it, because he's the one that had everybody do it all wrong. Now, I don't know if that sounds familiar or not, but we today look at the Old Testament and look at things in the Bible and we say, oh, well, it was a long time ago, I'll just do it this way. No, God still gave us specific instructions that we were to follow, and we don't. If you call yourself a Christian and you've asked Jesus to come into your life and that you want to follow him, then you have specific instructions. We all do. This applies to me. I'm human too, and we all make mistakes each and every day, but we all try to take shortcuts, and those shortcuts don't work, and this is a perfect example. And just remember as I'm reading this that our body, if you call yourself a Christian, is no different than the Ark of the Covenant. Remember that as I read. So it doesn't matter what you do something even if it's wrong. The person who wrote this article said that's the dumbest counsel he's ever heard. or she has ever heard, whichever. Do nothing until it's right, then do it with all your might. That's wise counsel. Yeah, that's not very wise counsel, and the Bible shows us this. Okay, now here's David standing next to a corpse that he gets mad, 2 Samuel 6:8, because the Lord's outburst against Uzzah. We have David angry at the Lord when in fact the Lord was angry at David. Now understand, David hasn't done his homework. We often get in trouble when we don't do our homework. We seek the Lord's will and we reach out on a lark and we want to do that. So in expediency or convenience or because we're in a hurry, we make that decision. And the Lord says, look, I have written a lot of things in my book about that decision you just made, and I want you to take counsel from me. That's why it's not working. And if you want to have a heart for me, then you check my word and you find either precepts or principles and you go according to that, and I'll make you happy like you won't believe. If you don't, you will be miserable. So that's exactly what God's telling us today. Many of us are asking for things from God, but they go against his will. Now, there are some things we ask of God that are not in the Bible, but we have to trust God that we're not getting that thing because we're not ready for it. Or maybe God can foresee that that one little thing is going to cause something bad in our lives later on down the road. Or maybe it's going to cause us to turn away from God or cause either ourselves or someone we care about to get killed. We never know his plan, and we have to trust his plan ultimately, no matter what. People need to know the right way to do things and to practice them. Shortcuts or grandstand plays almost never work over time, and when they are substituted for careful execution, people are often hurt. Uzzah undoubtedly meant well. On the surface, he did a useful, helpful, even noble thing, but he did not do the right thing, and it cost him his life. In this strange circumstance brought about because David, the leader, wanted to do things his way, the right thing would have been to let the ark touch the earth instead of Uzzah's sinful hands. David assembled thousands of people and had glorious music played in celebration of the ark's return to Jerusalem. It was a grandstand play. It would have been much better had he quietly followed the instructions and done it right. Enthusiasm must be accomplished by obedience. It is not enough to mean well. We must also do the right thing. So the author of this article could not have said it more perfectly than what they did. Okay? We may say to God, well, we did this and we did that, and look what I did over here, and I just can't believe, after a whole week of doing this and that for you, that this horrible thing happened to me. How could this happen? Okay, well, number one, we live in an imperfect, corrupt world that for a time, under the authority of God, of course, has been handed to Satan and the kingdom of hell until prophecy is fulfilled. So we live in a corrupt, imperfect world. Okay, where bad things are going to happen. Our bodies are not the bodies we will receive when we are in heaven. Our bodies are also of this world, corrupt and imperfect. Number two, not always, but there are times where we do something without the counsel of God. We don't seek out his word and we don't seek out prayerfully his will in that situation. Number three, the gist of this whole thing is basically obedience to God is most important. Above everything else, God demands our obedience. And when we are disobedient, it may not be the death of our physical body we suffer at that time, but we may suffer some sort of spiritual darkness in our lives because we're disobeying God. He is our Father. He's warning us. He knows what's best for us. He's trying to lead us and guide us in the right direction. And when we do what we want to do, whether it be by sheer ignorance or utter disobedience, we are disobeying God, and there are repercussions for disobeying God. Whether, you want to write off the Old Testament, that's very sad because there's a lot of things God is teaching us from the Old Testament, just like this story of David, Uzzah, and the Ark of the Covenant. To put it plainly, your body is the temple of God. Your body is the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? This was such an important thing that God gave specific instructions about everything, just as he has given us specific instructions on how to treat our bodies and how to treat our lives when we have the Holy Spirit residing within our own spirit inside of our body. So we have to think about as Christians what we are doing with the Ark of the Covenant. Are we following the instructions to the T? Are we doing exactly as God has told us to do? Are we living in a clean, godly manner? Are we obeying God at every turn? We have to look at these things. If it was that important in regards to the Ark of the Covenant, it is that important in regards to your physical body and your physical life here on this earth. Again, your body is the same as the Ark of the Covenant. I would like each and every person to take time to go back into the Old Testament and read a little bit here and there about situations involving the Ark of the Covenant and see what a fearful, important, holy thing the Ark of the Covenant was. Because when you do that, and I mean the right kind of fear, like a respectful fear, when you do that, you will begin to come to the knowledge and understanding of just how holy your body is once you get saved, and just how terrible of a thing it is to use your body in any inappropriate, sinful way that goes against or contrary to the instructions that God has given you. You will begin to be afraid to sin. Number one, as you develop the love of Christ in your heart and you develop a true passion and longing and yearning and love for God, you won't want to do those things. But when you're tempted to do those things, not only will your love and your passion for God keep you from making the mistake, but your respectful fear and admonition of God will also keep you from doing those things. You will begin to think, oh, well, God knows something, and I better not do this thing because, God is going to be displeased with me if I do. And I don't know what the powers of hell might do to me if I do this thing, because when I do this thing and I go against God, I open myself up for the powers of hell. Remember my one video that I made that showed the piece of paper and the holes in it? Those are the entrances where you're letting the enemy into your life. When you disobey God, you put some big holes in that white paper, okay? So that's our lesson for today. Go read it, 2 Samuel 6. Listen to this video again if you have to. And then sit down and start mapping out and studying the directions God has given us for our temple, our Ark of the Covenant, which contains the Spirit of God the Father, the one and only living and true God. Thank you, and God bless you.